The back pages. Start off with Jack's paper, The Sun. You can see there the headline at the bottom, mad and glad Gunners boosters Real face four-man ban and Saka's ready to return. Back page of the Telegraph goes on Saka there with his thumb up in his Instagram posts. He's back in training and Sweeney survives crisis vote. Yes, more on the travails of Bill Sweeney at the RFU. Back page of The Guardian looks like this. You can see the picture of Mara Ramirez and Lauren James there. Ramirez caps fight back to seal semi-spot. Yes, Chelsea winning 3-0 against Manchester City, 3-2 on aggregate to meet the Women's Champions League semi-finals. A little bit there on Bill Sweeney at the top, and also Max Verstappen's reaction to Red Bull axing Liam Lawson. And back page of The Eye, bolts from the Blues. Chelsea overturn first leg deficit to reach Champions League semis. And also the headline at the bottom there, longer transfer window hands United PSR. Booster clubs have 10 more days to offload players. All right, welcome along once again to Jack and to Riyadh. So we're going to start off with your paper, Jack, The Sun, and that headline, mad and glad Gunners boost as Real face four-man ban and Saka's ready to return. Let's start off with the second part of that first, shall we, and talk about Bukayo Saka, of course, has been out for 3 months with this hamstring injury. Simple picture, simple caption. Hello again. I just wonder, first of all, before we talk about his return, how much do you feel that Arsenal's season might have been different? I know they've suffered a lot of injuries, but particularly Saka, had he been fit, available and playing?
Yeah, I think, the fact that he's still their biggest achiever in terms of goals and assists, having been out for the last 3 months, says it all, really. They've, not just him as well, when Odegaard was unavailable earlier in the season, they really struggled as well. It's sort of everyone fitted in around those two players, and if you take one of those out of any team, really, they're going to struggle. Of course, Arsenal have had a number of injuries elsewhere, which certainly hasn't helped them, but losing the leadership and the mentality of players like Odegaard and Saka and the creativity and efficiency in terms of finishing that Saka brings has been massive for them. They've not quite had the ability to take the chances that Liverpool have, the few chances that Liverpool have offered them up to keep a Premier League title race alive this season. And you definitely have to feel, and you'd imagine Mikel Arteta will certainly feel, that having a player of Saka's quality and how he lifts everyone in the team would have made such a huge difference. And I think it's fantastic news for them, of course, that he's going to be back in time to play in what's now the biggest game of their season against Real Madrid. The Premier League is gone. The domestic cups are gone. It's all on the Champions League now, and they face an incredibly, incredibly difficult tie with the team that are so synonymous with the Champions League. And like we saw in the last leg, always seem to find a way when it looks like they're not going to manage it. Having the boost back of Saka in for that, maybe getting a little run out in the Premier League just before that as well, is fantastic news for them. Yeah,
listen, I think if you look at the back page of The Star, Sack back, the first part of the headline, Bukayo says hello again, back in training. But I wonder, Riyadh, when would you actually play him, potentially start him? Jack says maybe get a run out in the Premier League, but how would you manage, if you were Mikel Arteta, these next few games as far as Saka is concerned?
I'm just still rather drawn to that headline. Yeah, look, you've got to be careful. It's a hamstring, and you could sort of, this old nonsensical saying you heard years ago, you can kind of talk to a knee injury, but a hamstring won't listen. You don't rush these things. They are incredibly delicate. He is about speed, dynamism, quick turns. You really don't want to be taking a chance with that. And look, the Champions League's there, the rest of the season, they're second. I would say they're pretty safe for the top four, but they're not going to win the league. So, you sort of you choose your games carefully. I think the Fulham game, I think there would be a degree of insanity in using him in that on Tuesday. But the Real Madrid match is definitely in view. Look, he's just come back, and I think one thing that's important to remember is as well, when he was first injured, we go back to December. The initial prognosis for that was 2 months. It's now far closer to 3 months. So already this has got the appearance of an injury that was more complicated than first thought. It was a major problem. They've got to be very careful with him. And when we talk about Saka, I remember sort of various conversations a couple of years ago when he was already prominent, but he'd gone on this absolutely astonishing run of starts and minutes, and there were guys who'd been very, very close to the Arsenal academy setup. People like Liam Brady saying, you've got to be careful with him. You can't burn him out. There was already this concern about the amount of minutes that he had in his legs, and I've often sort of wondered with the sort of a muscular injury like this, is that partially a legacy of how much he was used in those early days? So I think if there's going to be any message from it, it's just you have to be extremely careful. And I would add to all of that, Nwaneri, I've loved watching him when he's played off on that right flank. You see an injury and then someone else gets an opportunity, and he's been one of those guys who puts a smile on your face, a lot like Saka. So there has been that side to it, but now that you've got him back, they've got to keep him in some level of cotton wool and just ensure he can get to the end of the season and get some kind of break into his legs so that he can recharge and have a proper season next year.
I wonder, Jack. Actually, look, this is on the page, the front page of the sport section of the Telegraph as well. That picture of Bukayo Saka. Look who's back. Saka return boost for Arsenal as Real stars face European ban. We'll talk about the Real Madrid side and the situation with these four players in a moment. But I just wonder in terms of the complexion of this tie and how Arsenal approach it. You mentioned this is the only thing really left for them. Whereas for Real Madrid, it's a very different situation. They're embroiled in a very tight title battle in La Liga. They're in the Copa del Rey semi-finals as well, and the Champions League. They want all these trophies. Do you think that Arsenal, given the fact that this is just the last chance, might play with that joy, that freedom that I suppose Riyad was alluding to in terms of the style of Saka himself and players like Nwaneri who love to attack, to hit the real sort of margins of the pitch to stretch the game and really give Real something to think about?
But I think that's the test, really. Arteta will want them to go and play with that joy and to really seize this chance. Whether they can do it or whether they feel the pressure of this being the final thing they can go and achieve something in this season is the real test for them. You'd hope that characters like Odegaard, Saka, Declan Rice can seize that moment rather than be overawed by it. But facing Real Madrid is another thing that's added into that, taking on the kings of Europe as well. It should be a fantastic chance to really go and make a statement. And I think the benefit of having Saka back for these games is, having been at the second leg of the Madrid derby in the last round, I genuinely think they might have a slightly better chance against Real Madrid in that they do leave more space. Atletico didn't really try and open it up because they knew that they couldn't really do that if they were going to try and get a result. But Saka will be able to exploit those spaces that Real can leave at times. And again, I think the dilemma they will have in terms of how much they use him, as Riyad was just talking about, is the second leg is the decisive one. Do you start him in that first leg when you've got the home advantage and you want to make a statement, or do you have to take the balanced approach and rest him for what is the all-important one, the second leg in Madrid, where it will actually get decided? But again, his character is a part of this in taking on that challenge, going to somewhere like the Bernabeu and having to stand up to that and make his mark on it, as long as he can stay fit and be at the level we know he can be for that game.
Back page of the Mirror also references this story, but let's focus on the second half of the headline again here. So Saka's back as 4 Real stars face Champions League ban. So this could sort of tilt the tide slightly in favour of Arsenal, should this be the case. But, I mean, to think of actually 4 players being banned, Riyad, perhaps is maybe pushing it a little bit. But first of all, can you just explain why they're facing this ban in the first place?
So the UEFA have announced this investigation into Rudiger, Mbappe, Ceballos and Vinicius Junior. So it sort of all goes back to the Atletico game in the last 16. They've sent, according to some reports I've seen, they've sent 4 videos to UEFA. Atletico have, alleging indecent conduct. So I'll just go through my list here. So Rudiger appears to be a throat-slitting gesture. Mbappe has grabbed his crotch. Ceballos has done the universal signal for up yours. I think we can say that. And Vinicius Junior has just had a running battle with the crowd throughout the match. Now, I find the interesting one there. I find is Mbappe, because of course I don't know, Atletico presumably full of neighbourly love would like to see Real Madrid hindered in some way, but I kind of go back to 2019 in Juventus when Diego Simeone did the exact same gesture, and I believe he escaped a touchline ban. So we might be talking about some precedent there. And likewise, Jude Bellingham in the Euros against Slovakia performed the same gesture, I think is probably the cleanest description. And he also got a one-game suspended ban. So I wouldn't necessarily be pinning an enormous amount of hope on a suspension in that regard. The Rudiger one, that could be potentially more problematic, the throat-slitting gesture. So, you know, I would be surprised, shall we say, and this has nothing to do with ongoing suggestions of conspiracies that entirely favour Real Madrid at every juncture, but I would be surprised if suspensions followed.
How do you think this will likely play out, Jack? Yeah, you mentioned, by the way, Bellingham, it was a one-match suspended ban and a fine of around £25,000 for that crotch-grabbing gesture. So, you know, that seems to be the way that it's headed in previous times, you know, rather than a straight ban. Would you suggest we're likely to see all four players line up for Real Madrid for that first leg of their Champions League quarter-final?
I'd imagine so, yeah. I think if I was working within Arsenal, you wouldn't suddenly start planning for a game without all four of them being involved in the Real Madrid lineup. And it's something that could add to. There's been a lot of talk around conspiracy at Real Madrid in terms of officiating within Spanish football this season, and UEFA certainly won't want to draw themselves into that to just raise this up to another level. So while it's, you know, very exciting for Arsenal fans to hope and pray that they're going to be facing a Real Madrid team shorn of some incredible players. You know, Mbappe and Vinicius are such a dangerous pair up front, especially, you know, Rodrigo on the other side doing a lot of the hard work for them as well. But those two are the ones that Arsenal are really going to be worried about. And unfortunately for them, I think they're still going to have to worry about them. But it is something that, you know, Arsenal can use, maybe draw on if it doesn't quite go their way and they feel that it's something UEFA should have looked at a bit more. But again, going back to rising to that challenge of beating a team like this, you want to go up against a Real Madrid team that has all of these players. And if you're going to make a statement as a team that believes they can win the Champions League this season, you want to knock out the holders when they're at their strongest as well.
Jack and Ria, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at more of the stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Times. Sweeney sees off rebels in emphatic win. Yes, another twist and turn in the life of Bill Sweeney, the RFU chief exec. We'll be discussing that with the Jack and Ria in just a couple of minutes. Goes, I should say, because there's actually two of them. Longer transfer window hands United PSR boost. Clubs have 10 more days to offload players. And Riyadh, this is because of this exceptional registration period at the start, isn't it? The 1st to the 10th of June. Before then, it reopens on the 16th of June and then goes all the way through to the 1st of September. There is method in the sort of madness here, isn't there?
Yeah, so look, first of all, it's kind of mandated by this FIFA rule. You're allowed to have 89 days of transfer trading during the summer. That's part of a 16-week block for the season. Now, to break that down, because you've got this great big wedge of what I would call irrelevance in the middle, otherwise known as the Club World Cup, everything gets shunted a little bit further backwards. Now, to go to Matt Hughes' story there in the eye, where this might have some level of practical impact is around those clubs with PSR concerns. So the time for getting your books balanced, June the 30th. They've now got an extra 10 days in June. That could theoretically favour Man United, Newcastle, Villa, clubs like that who have been sailing quite close to the PSR the PSR win. Now, again, just to sort of resurrect an old grudge of mine, this does seem like, again, an awful lot of fuss for the sake of the Club World Cup. At some point, we're probably all going to have to accept that it's happening, it's here, and people have to cut their cloth accordingly. Now, there was another detail in Matt Hughes' story there that I did find interesting, which is obviously now the transfer window is going to go into the new season. And according to the reporting there in the Eye, you had 19 out of 20 technical directors had all been in favour of that window shutting on August the 14th and giving teams a clean run into the new season. This is your squad, get on with it. That's now no longer the case because, of course, the clubs have voted unanimously for the longer window, and that will, of course, be down to financial reasons and also quite reasonably not wanting to be caught short while other windows around the world, up to and including Saudi Arabia, are still open.
Yeah, that's in fact mentioned by Sam Wallace as well in the Telegraph. And Jack, the headline here: owners reject proposal to shut the transfer window early. I mean, it does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? You just don't want to, lose that significant player and not be able to replace and effectively just align with the rest of Europe with what they're doing, admittedly having to accommodate the Club World Cup as well.
It does, yeah, from that sense. And I think owners will be certainly scared of a big bid from Saudi Arabia coming in, because it sounds like they're gearing up again for another big summer, a big bid coming in from them for one of their star players that they simply can't turn down, especially if they are one of those clubs, as discussed earlier, that has a couple of PSR problems maybe continuing into the next financial year that they know they're going to have to deal with. If they get an offer big enough, then it's going to be hard to turn it down. But I think you can understand the frustrations from the sporting directors, the technical directors, and certainly I know it's a thing that a few managers have been upset with in the last couple of years, that deals are seeming to drag on and on and on, and maybe cause more disruption than losing a player in the circumstances if the window shuts a bit earlier. There's been real frustration from coaches that seemingly simple deals that they should have planned for haven't been able to get over the line, and that's something that obviously bringing it earlier ends that sort of confusion, ends those sort of problems, and would have been a nicer position for a lot of managers to be in.
Let's change tack, shall we, and look at the back page of the Times. And do you know what? Actually, looking at this headline, in fact, the first paragraph or two of Alex Lowe's piece, Riath, it's the strength of the adjectives that really gets me here. Sweeney sees off Rebels an emphatic win, faced down a grassroots rebellion, a dramatic vote, revelations about record levels of exec pay and bonuses triggered a revolt from disgruntled factions of the whole of the community game. I mean, this has been a real kind of dramatic tale, hasn't it, with Bill Sweeney as RFU chief exec and his travails over the last few months, given, I suppose, the perceptions about how much he's being paid, given, the RFU, making a lot of cuts. But how significant is this today, managing to have that emphatic result in that vote of no confidence?
They're certainly celebrating it as a huge win, which I suppose, in consideration of what could have happened, it is. It was an extraordinary situation. It was the first such meeting that has been called in 20 years within rugby in this country. So it was a massive moment. They're talking about an emphatic win. The vote was 466 to 206. Sure, that's a margin, but that's still a huge number of disgruntled voters in the game. I think what we're going to really see now, and we've heard this already in your reporting throughout the evening, this is going to be a massive amount of scrutiny on the RFU, on their transparency, on the powers that they give back to the grassroots game, because this isn't. It would be wrong to underplay just how much unhappiness there has been in rugby around this situation. And at Bill Sweeney in particular, we're talking about sort of record losses of, I think it was just short of £38 million. And he was being paid a bonus in the region of 358,000, taking a salary package to 1.1 million. I think at the very least that was an act of grotesque tone deafness But what the situation has left him, he's got his job, but he's going to be getting watched like a hawk by the game, and the promises that they've made around reforms, they're going to have to be delivered.
Let's move on to The Guardian. So from disgruntled to dismayed, which they say Max Verstappen is, by Red Bull's Lawson Cull. They're on the right-hand side. So a simple like of a post criticising the way that Red Bull have handled Liam Lawson's demotion to the Racing Bulls team, the sister team of Red Bull Racing. That is what's done the damage here. I wonder, Jack, what does that add in terms of the already strained situation amongst the forces of power that there are around this team, not just Christian Horner, but also the Verstappens? That's both Max and his dad.
It is quite entertaining, isn't it, how, drivers and sports figures in general now know that a couple of taps on their phone screen can cause such a huge story and huge problems for people in their industry, in their sport, their bosses as well, and the power that they feel they have to be able to go and do that. I quite enjoy that Max Verstappen's probably sat at home and thought, you know what, I probably can't come out and say this, but maybe he will in the coming days, you never know. But I'll just, nudge it this way ever so slightly and keep it going a bit. It seems some rather bizarre sort of mismanagement from Red Bull, really. They've obviously identified Lawson as someone that they want to put their trust in and their faith in, and have binned him off really quite quickly without giving him the chance to really shine on, having raced on two tracks he doesn't know, he's not familiar with, and immediately he's come out of that. I suppose you can argue that this is high-level sport, incredibly high-level motor racing, and Red Bull need to think of their standards and what they want to get out of him. But to push him down and knock him quite so quickly when you've made the big decision to go with a rookie and put that sort of trust in him sort of raises questions that, I think Max Verstappen will be alluding to over quite what they were thinking when they made that decision, and whether they had full faith in him when they did it as well. Yeah,
Yuki Tsunoda to Red Bull for the Japanese Grand Prix, of course, his home race. Really, really quickly, about 30 seconds if you can, Riath, on Chelsea beating Manchester City and overturning that deficit to reach the Women's Champions League semi-finals. I mean, effectively, now two teams from the WSL in that last four.
Look, it was a massive win, and they needed it as well. All energies it's become an obsession at Chelsea, the Champions League. 2-0 down from the first leg. It was looking like it was going horribly wrong for the new manager. So look, they're still on track. They've got Barcelona next, which isn't exactly easy in any form of the game. So, but look, they're still alive and going well.
Yeah, and it's Barcelona next. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Jack and Riath. If you missed any of the show, then there is another chance to see Backpages tonight, 5:30. Show also available as a podcast. Just download Backpages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Friday night. Our guests will be Mark Ogden from ESPN and Ian Ladyman from the Daily Mail.